Intro.
Where's the intro?
Ain't hard to choose where your sport shows updates and interviews. The only way is the right way, I might say. Nobody doing it better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they even did it and done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick back, relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sitdown Morning Show with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, always, Dan Alameda. And we got a special guest joining us in the studio. You guys are probably used to seeing him on the Fantasy Football Friday segment and on Thursdays as we break down all the questions, comments, and thoughts about fantasy football. Michael Harris joining us live, man. Mike, welcome, man.
Appreciate it. Good to be in studio. Excited to talk some ball. Little NFL, NBA. It's good to finally be here.
Yeah, man. I know we were planning on doing this for quite some time here. And the funny thing about this is it couldn't happen at a better time. It's a special day. It's your birthday, man. So, I guess great things happen on Michael Harris' birthday. He's live joining us in the TWSN studio. We're talking a little ball. Daniel, I apologize. I left you hanging on the little clap there. You were
no, you're good. I mean, listen.
But I'm excited that Mike's joining us, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to have somebody else in studio finally talk some ball, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, for sure. I want to start us off. It's gonna be a little interesting because I'm not used to Mike talking, stuff beyond fantasy football. So we're gonna get into a whole bunch of stuff today. But before we do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Hey, I want to start over in New York. Daniel Jones basically did something that is so out of whack. He basically bid his farewell to the Giants organization with several games still left to play. There's reports of him playing safety for the Giants and preparing for teams. It's interesting. Let's roll the clip.
Let's see. The opportunity to play for the New York Giants was truly a dream come true, and I'm extremely grateful to the Mara and Tisch families for the chance to play here. The Giants are truly a first-class organization, and I have nothing but genuine respect and appreciation for the people who have built it and who helped carry on that tradition. I've met so many special people and created relationships that will truly last a lifetime. Thank you to all my teammates, coaches, and staff that have done so much for me these past 6 years. There have been some great times, but of course, we all wish there had been more of those. I take full responsibility for my part in not bringing more wins. No one wanted to win more games worse than me, and I gave everything I had on the field and in my preparation. Of course, this season has been disappointing for all, and of course, I wish I could have done more. I'm 100% accountable for my part. I did not play well enough consistently enough to help the team get the results. The reality of the NFL is it's hard to win games and requires consistent performance from everyone involved. We didn't do that well enough, so the idea to change something happens, and I understand. I love the game. I love being part of a team. I'm excited for the next opportunity and know that there's a lot of good football in front of me, and I'm excited about that. To all the fans, I have deep respect and appreciation for your passion and love for the Giants. The fans are a huge part of what makes playing for the Giants so special.
Let me just say that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen before. I get Daniel Jones was playing bad. I get it. But was he playing that bad to where the guy announces his departure from the organization with weeks left to go? You have players coming out saying that they believe Daniel Jones is still the best quarterback on the roster. But how weird is it also? You start Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock, too. To me, this is an organization that's not serious. This, in my opinion, is the Giants tanking without actually tanking or coming out saying they're tanking. But honestly, I think the way that they've treated Daniel Jones on the way out, I can't be shocked growing up in the New York, New Jersey area. I got to be honest with you, this isn't shocking to me. This is how it looks, right? But it's been disrespectful, if you ask me. I think the way that Daniel Jones has been treated on his last few weeks as a Giant has been mediocre. And I will say this: if you're an opposing, quarterback, if you're a quarterback that's coming into the league or a quarterback that's hitting free agency or an agent, you got to be paying attention to what's going on in New York to some degree. You have to be. You have to wonder how that could affect you and your chances of going there. Or does that even entice you to want to play for the New York Giants? It doesn't seem like a team that really knows what they're doing or even how to treat some of their players on the way out. That's just my thoughts. Danny, I usually say I want to go to you, but because it's Mike's birthday, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Malik. I think this is blatant tanking. This is as bad as it gets. I mean, they're benching Daniel Jones to avoid the injury guarantees that he has baked into his contract for next season. They don't want him to go down and have to pay him a bunch of money. And there's rumors swirling around that they're doing the same thing with Drew Lock. There's stipulations in his contract that if he plays more than 40% of the season snaps, he gets, I believe it's a $250,000 incentive. And I mean, based on the actions of this organization, I completely believe that they are trying to circumvent paying him $250,000 as an NFL franchise. I mean, there's reports that the players are coming out and saying that they are pretty disappointed that they're doing this for financial reasons, and I don't blame them. I mean, that was the most awkward press conference that I have seen in a long time. I mean, like, it was like a mid-season retirement speech from a guy who's in his fourth NFL season, like fifth. It's pretty ridiculous. What's going on in New York right now? It was uncomfortable. It seemed forced. I mean, he was reading from a script. All around. I mean, it's really, yeah. And then the reports that he's playing safety on the scout team, like they're just embarrassing this guy. I mean, just all around, I don't think the organization is handling this situation well whatsoever.
I think that they're just not a serious organization at this point. And that's just what I take away from it. And I think it's funny how the narrative changes, right? And this is good for Daniel Jones. I think obviously this isn't football related, but good people always come out on top. And what I mean by that is Daniel Jones has been criticized time and time again, from myself included, right? $160 million contract. He's not the franchise guy. And all season long, we were saying that. All season long, I was saying, listen, I don't think that Brian Dable is a huge part of this issue. Like, he's a part of it, but I don't think he's the sole reason they're losing. So I'm like, the firing talks, I'm good off that. I think you need to get a new quarterback. But now the narrative is spun. And it's saying, hey, well, yes, Daniel Jones sucked. But to throw him away, you see what Malik Neighbors, Kayvon Thibodeau, all their players are coming out in support saying, hey, this dude at least stood by the organization. This dude wasn't, putting the blame on other people. He's putting the blame on himself. So I love how, it's kind of switched up. And it was just weird, though, like him reading from the script. I'd be curious to see whose call that really was, because, like, it didn't seem super genuine. And like the dude is looking down the entire time at the paper and he's like, I got some words for you guys that I prepared. Maybe he's just an awkward public speaker. Okay, maybe that's what it is. But looking at how this affects the Giants in the future, I think this was totally a business move. Like you said, $22 million, especially if he was injured the rest of the season, he would have had much more guarantees. And the fact that you get to push him away now, it looks like they'll be able to cut him this offseason, kind of get rid of the Daniel Jones saga. And I'd be curious to see what they go and do next. And I think that's the part of the conversation that I kind of want to switch to is, where do they go from here? Right? Do they go out and fire Brian Dable? Do they go out and get a new quarterback? What do you think, Mike? Where do you think that they go from here? Let's start with the quarterback front. Where do you think that they go?
I really hope they go bridge quarterback here. Okay. Bring in a veteran and just steady the ship for a couple of years and move on from there.
Yeah.
A lot of the luster of this rookie quarterback class is kind of worn off as the year has gone on. I know Shadur is picking up some steam and whatnot, but this seems like a quarterback class full of guys who are going to get some coaches fired, to be honest. And I really just hope they do something like we're seeing in Tampa Bay or in Seattle. They find a solid veteran, and they've got young weapons, and ideally you'd like to get the most out of them in their rookie contract. Yes. But I mean, sinking the ship on a rookie quarterback who ends up not working out is about as bad as it gets. And I think they should just take their punches for a year or two, maybe contend for the playoffs. We've seen it out of a Brian Daboll team already, contend for the playoff with a lacking roster, and just get a veteran presence there at quarterback, get the most out of Malik Neighbors, get the most out of your pass rush, and hopefully shore up the front seven, because from the rushing standpoint, that defensive line has looked awful this season. But I really hope that they don't scramble too heavily to try and address the quarterback position. Just kind of roll with it and just get one of those bridge guys and figure out where you're going in the 2026 draft.
And that's where my issue with this whole situation is. You just went out and you wasted but you took a guy with the top 5 pick in Malik Neighbors, and very quickly that dude is going to be one of, if not, top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. You can't afford to waste. And I'm not saying you were saying that, but if you're the Giants organization, you had to have been thinking about this, long term. Okay, if you're going to take Malik Neighbors last year, what's your pathway to getting him the ball? What's your pathway to actually contending with him? And that's what I'd be concerned with, is saying, hey, this offseason, you got to figure out your quarterback situation fast. If it's going after a bridge guy and drafting a quarterback. But you look at a guy like Justin Jefferson, who, at least with the Vikings, now they're contending and they look good. But imagine what Justin Jefferson's thought process would be if the Vikings were consistently tanking. And I think that's where my mind goes with this Giants team is they got to get it figured out fast this offseason, because you've got Brian Daboll. Okay, he's up in arms. And what happens? You go fire him. You get a new quarterback. There's so much change that's happening. And it's like you guys are just going in circles and circles. And it looks like they went out this offseason. You traded for Brian Burns. You're trying to contend. So I think that the quarterback situation, I'm with you. I think they go bridge quarterback, and you have to sell your fan base on something, man. So that's what I think.
You both brought up interesting points about a bridge quarterback. It's interesting to me, right? Because what if you had a bridge quarterback already on your roster that you're just choosing not to play? Maybe like a Drew Lock, right?
True.
It could be could be simple, right? And for me, I would think that a guy like Drew Lock would thrive in a Brian Daboll system, personally. Spread style offense. I think he would. But you have to question the Giants' thought process here, because if the thought process was, hey, we're going to go with a bridge quarterback, then in my opinion, Drew Lock would be in the lineup right now.
And they wouldn't be tanking.
Nobody's taking Tommy DeVito serious. Come on now. Are we like
no.
And now Drew Lock is probably looking at himself like, why did I choose to come here when I was told I was quarterback 2? Drew Lock probably looked at this spot like, Daniel Jones is definitely going to get benched at some point. Right. He's definitely not going to be great. And I'm going to be thrusted into the spot at some point. And for, your team to be told, Drew Lock is stepping down. I'm sorry. Daniel Jones is stepping down. He's no longer going to be the starting quarterback, but we're going to turn to Tommy DeVito at quarterback. We already saw that. We already saw that story last year. It was a fun story. It was cool. Tommy Pizzas or whatever it was called. They were calling him. I don't remember what they were calling. They were calling him something. And, I don't know. I just think this sends a bad message to the entire locker room. It's like, as you're, the opposing defense, how do you get up to play? How do you say, hey, you know what? Our team is trying to do everything in their power to make sure we put out winning football. You don't believe that. But this is even a bigger question. This is the same brass that gave him the contract extension.
Yes. Yeah.
So how could you trust them to make the right decision regarding the quarterback position of the future? They don't know what they're doing, right? And to me, it's like we're going around in circles and circles and circles with the Giants. And the quarterback position, yes, that's what it was. It was Tommy Cutlets. I thought, what did I say? Tommy Pizzas? That's crazy.
Tommy Pizzas.
That's great. I knew it was something. That's great. But what do you think happens with Daniel Jones now?
He gets released. I think so. I think that this offseason, I think they'll end up releasing him. I mean, you could trade him. But if I'm an opposing team, and if I'm a team looking at, wow, why am I going to take on what he's got 2 more years left in his contract? Like, I think they'll end up releasing him, taking on that $22 million in dead cap. And I think Daniel Jones could go to a team and kind of be of the mold of potentially Sam Darnold, but kind of do what Zach Wilson's doing, do what Mac Jones is doing. And like a guy like Mac Jones is a perfect example. He had his opportunity And right now, the past 2 weeks without the Trevor Lawrence, he's looked like garbage. But I think that there's going to be a team that's going to take a Daniel Jones. And
do you think he's salvageable? Let me ask you that.
Salvageable? Not really, to be honest. As a franchise quarterback, I think he's.
A franchise quarterback is so.
I don't think he can do what Sam Darnold.
Can he do what Andy Dalton did?
And be a.
He's already led the Giants to a playoffs, right?
I think he could be a quarterback. Starting quarterback,
or once, just once.
Yeah. I think he could be a fine quarterback, but like he would be my backup, or he'd be my bridge quarterback.
The reason why I'm thinking about it, because he's from the Carolina area.
Carolina.
Hey man, I'm just throwing things out there right now.
I
mean, they've done, huh?
You just spitballing.
I'm just spitballing, man. Backing up Bryce Young maybe or something like that. I don't know.
I agree with what you said, Malik. Franchise quarterback is a big word.
Yes.
He is. There's maybe 6 of those in the NFL right now.
Yes.
He is definitely not that. Serviceable, I think, is a word that he can aspire to be. I mean, that's what you're looking for in a quarterback for most teams, is simply serviceable. I mean, the fact of the matter is there is not 32 NFL players who can play the quarterback position at a serviceable level in the year 2024. So I think he'll 100% get cut. No team, not even the Giants, is willing or interested in taking on the $40 million man, Daniel Jones. And they'll eat the money. The Giants will, and he'll sign somewhere else as a backup.
But I think I want to speak to a larger issue really quick when it comes to, and I didn't expect to spend this much time on this topic. Can we stop taking, advice or opinions and valuing that into our draft evaluation from former quarterbacks or people that have ties to quarterbacks? What do I mean by that is people like Peyton Manning and Eli Manning. They remember the reason why Daniel Jones even got drafted to the Giants. It was because he went through the Manning Academy. He was very close with the Mannings, and they gave him a resounding, thumbs up. He could be the guy for New York of the future. And I'm not saying like they're going to be wrong on all their future prospects, but in large part, they said, I remember the talk when Daniel Jones was coming out was he's very similar to Eli Manning. He's literally an Eli Manning clone to a degree, just with the ability to run and Eli was always good at extending plays, but like his ability to run is something that is an added element. But they said he was very similar to an Eli Manning. So when they drafted him with the thought process that we're getting Eli 2.0. That was their thought process, and they won championships with Eli. They won 2, as a matter of fact. But I think that going back, right, there's been so many quarterbacks that have given thumbs up to guys that they've worked with. And I'll be honest with you, there's a little bit of bias that creeps in a little bit, right? I know the Maras, they value opinions from people like Bill Belichick, who they're like best friends with. They value opinions from Coughlin. They value opinions from the Manning brothers, right? Because Eli was there, was such a good quarterback for them and had so much success. But I think this speaks to a larger issue. I think you have to actually allow football people to do football things. You have to allow them to do their job. You have to allow them to evaluate. The last general manager that they had, what was his name? I forgot his name. He came from Carolina. Gettleman. Horrible. Made some terrible decisions throughout the process. Let Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. That's the one thing that's probably saving their ass. They didn't get a chance to draft their guy. They didn't get a chance to give a resounding thumbs up on their guy. The reason why I don't know if they'll go with a bridge quarterback is because as much as they gave Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen a vote of confidence this year, I don't know if they're going to do that next year. I don't know if they're going to do that the year afterwards. And whoever you bring in here, you're directly tying to your future here in New York. You are, right? So ideally, the person that they bring in, and you look at some of the veteran names, right? I just don't know if they're. I don't know if they're moving the needle right now in terms of any of these bridge quarterbacks. For me, there was a move the Giants could have made in the offseason that I thought could have made sense. Probably didn't fit Brian Daboll's system to a T, but I wonder why Ryan Tannehill just sat out there. I think that he could have offered more than Daniel Jones personally. I think that there are certain things the Giants could have done if they were serious about winning. But I also think that, when coaches are in this spot where it felt like Brian Daboll didn't believe in Eli Manning, to be honest with you. But when coaches are in this spot, sometimes I feel like they will they will play guys, right, with the notion that, hey, maybe if I play you and I show the organization, I put you on display and I show the organization how poor you are, how horrible you are, it might save my ass. And I think the organization, seeing how bad Daniel Jones did under a Brian Daboll, seeing it firsthand after handing him out that contract, I think it showed them a lot. Personally.
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's a part of the conversation too. I feel like gets lost is the simple fact of new head coaches and new GMs. These guys walk into a building with none of their original guys there. And I think that's a perfect, analysis of Brian Daboll. As much as we can say had success with Daniel Jones, it wasn't his pick. It wasn't. Same thing with Joe Schoen. And the issue that I have with the Joe Schoen thing is, and this is the conversation of, do you go off of a guy like Daniel Jones that has had some success versus giving him the massive contract? Because that's where they failed, right? You've clearly failed by giving him a 4-year, $160 million deal. That was a failure, whichever way we want to slice it. And that's where, what's your alternative in that instance? And for me, it's like, hey, I think you got to go elsewhere. So for me, my only concern, and I'm with you with the veteran quarterback thing, is they're going to have a top 3 pick. So it's like, for Joe Schoen to save his ass, to save Brian Daboll's job, because that's what they're fighting for their jobs. If they're still here this offseason,
they will be.
What's going to save their job? Is it going after a veteran guy, or is it selling to the fan base another young quarterback? And that's where I'm not confident in the Cam Wards. I'm not confident in the Jalen Milrose. Do they go after one of those guys just to sell it to their fan base?
What if, sorry to cut you off, Mike, what if they bring back Sam Darnold to New York? What if they go after a Sam Darnold to New York? Can you see Brian Daboll working with a Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
I can see it. I think it makes sense. I think he fits his style of offense. What's up, Mike?
I was saying I've got great news. 24-year-old Trey Lance is going to be a free agent this
offseason.
offseason.
That was a thought process. That was literally one of the names I had written down. I said Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, guys that make sense for a lot of reasons. I'm trying to just think. I just don't know if the rookie quarterback thing is a thing they're going to be wanting to sit through. And even if so, I think it's going to be. I could see them overdrafting a guy.
Yes, and that's the issue.
Like that, I could see them overdrafting a Quinn Ewers.
Yeah,
I could see them overdrafting, a Carson. I could see that. I think some of the guys we're talking about here, like a Shedeur Sanders, are destined, slated for Las Vegas, for Vegas. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's the worst kept secret, personally. I think I could see a scenario in which the Giants trade back.
Yes,
in the draft.
I think we see at least one team trade back to just not have their hand forced into taking a quarterback during this draft class. I think it's almost a given that someone at a minimum will.
Right, 100%. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live, when we upload content from the TWSN studio. There's been some good talk in the morning. We're talking about Daniel Jones and his future in New York is interesting to me. It's an interesting topic. But one thing I want to get to is another quarterback situation that might be arising before our very own eyes. And I could 100% just be making this up, right? But I wouldn't mind seeing it personally. Michael Penix Jr. In Atlanta. What do y'all think about that? Do y'all believe in the thought process that maybe it's time for the Falcons to kind of turn to him? The reason why that question is so interesting to me is because it felt like the Falcons came into the season with a lot of hype. Yep. The moment you drafted Michael Penix Jr. after you signed Kirk Cousins, it felt like the vibes were down a little bit, right? The expectation was Kirk Cousins was going to be the guy, Kirk O'Chain's coming to Atlanta, yada, yada, a whole 9 yards. And now he's in a situation in which you just know somebody's breathing down your neck. You know, the moment you mess up in a long, for a stretch period of time, they're probably going to move to a different direction. The reason why that's so interesting to me is because the Falcons are in a situation because they did draft a quarterback that is much older, right? He can't afford the ability to sit and wait for a year or two or all that kind of stuff. So you got to judge Kirk Cousins not by week to week, but maybe like every 2 games and just assess where you are with the quarterback position, because you got to look at it and you got to say to yourself, at some point, we're going to have to turn to the guy.
Yeah.
We're going to have to turn to the guy and see what we got. Or guess what? It might be a wasted, it might be a waste of a pick. Yeah. I'm really curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. I know Daniel was extremely high on the Falcons coming into the season. The Falcons obviously still with a winning record right now. they still can have the chance to make some noise, but they feel like one of those teams that are just competitive. They feel like just one of those teams that are competitive that I'm not personally taking serious. Any team that's led by Kirk Cousins, I'm not taking too serious, to be honest with you, when it comes to championship, being a championship caliber team. I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he'll always have you in competitive games, but I just think that the expectation was much higher. Mike, what are your thoughts?
At this exact moment in time, I don't think you can move to Michael Penix or really give it a thought. You've got the Chargers and the Vikings, like in this exact moment. You got the Chargers and the Vikings the next 2 weeks. I mean, putting a rookie quarterback out there against those two defenses is just malpractice. You just can't do that. And I know it's not where you want to be, 6-5 on the record right now, but you look at the rest of the schedule in their final 4 games of the season. They got the Giants, the Panthers, and the Raiders. I mean, if those aren't gimme wins, I don't know what are. So you gut it out. You get a win against one of those tough defenses in the Chargers or the Vikings, and you get to 10 wins. You make the playoffs, and you roll the dice with Kirk. I just don't think that the move. I don't think that Kirk right now is not the long-term answer. I think that you have to play with the players on your roster. You have to play to win. And the move to Michael Penix is we're setting up for the future and not really playing to win. But with this roster they have in place, I really think that they have to, whether or not you think a Super Bowl run is possible. And I mean, I really don't think that that's in the range of outcomes for the Falcons either. But whether you like it or not, this is a team that absolutely has to play for a playoff run this season. So I don't think that you can make the move to Michael Penix just yet. And I mean, it's pretty killer that they just have every statistical measure. It's just a bottom 10 defense, just efficiency wise, yardage wise, scoring defense. It's just that's not helping. And
can we talk about that though?
Yeah.
You hire a coach in Raheem Morris,
yeah,
thinking that he was going to fix the defense, an issue that has plagued the Atlanta Falcons, and nothing to show for it.
You know what's shocking to me is they rank dead last in quarterback pressure rate. The generating the least pressure of any defensive line in the NFL, which is really, really shocking to me. But yeah, just in general, basically every statistical measure you look at, they're bottom 10, which is Raheem Morris. You expect him coming over from LA to make some changes, but we just haven't seen that. And I mean, obviously you can't go out and put up 17 points against the Saints, who are also now without Marshawn Lattimore in the secondary. You can't go out. That's an ugly showing. But NFL teams are going to have those blips throughout the season. It's a hard league to win games in. But yeah, I don't really think especially with these couple of games coming up, you can consider a move to Michael Penix now.
And I love that assessment, but I want to touch more about the malpractice, so to speak, of the Falcons when it came to their draft. I think Michael Penix Jr. was the biggest shock of the draft when they drafted him, right? But when you think back, right, and obviously they're all in their rookie year, but when you still look back and you look at some of the names defensively that are on the board, you would have thought Raheem Morris was going to be licking his chops at potentially adding one of these guys. You look back at some of the people that were available, Latu, right? Byron Murphy,
Jared
Verse. I mean, you had your pick of a litter. You really had the opportunity to add a lot of guys, or one of these guys that could have potentially helped change their defense. And for me, I look at a guy like Byron Murphy, who everybody was high on. You know, when the Falcons were making their run at the Super Bowl and they had Dan Quinn as their head coach and Kyle Shanahan as their offensive play caller, they had the young defensive tackle who was absolutely just put in the league on notice, if you will. And for me, I feel like the pressure from a defensive line perspective is something that has been plaguing the Atlanta Falcons for the last 3 seasons. And you thought that this year, hey, this is going to be the time where the Falcons get a chance to get it right. And I think that's why it shocked everybody, if you will. I think the world of their general manager, Terry Fontenot, although he hasn't had a lot of success, I just look at it and I say, hey, man, listen, that was a miss in a big way. I just think the Michael Penix Jr. conversation is interesting just because it just feels like the Falcons have become very similar to what the Vikings were under Kirk Cousins to a degree.
Yeah.
Just kind of I don't know, just kind of like this competitive team that's just plateauing. What are your thoughts, Dan?
They're a team that they don't know what they want to be. And that's my frustrating part is you can't, and you said Terry Fontenot, right? I think he deserves so much blame for this. I think that the fact is, and there was a clip that came out, they were in the war room, said, oh, well, we tried to trade back up. We wanted to go out and get one of the pass rushers. Well, yeah, like, of course, but what is it going to take to go trade back up from pick number 30 or 40 that you had all the way up until 17. It's like, if you guys were thinking about that, and I totally understand the logic of drafting Michael Penix Jr. I do. I like
really.
it.
Tell me what that logic is.
I like it. I think that the fact is, I think he could be a very good quarterback. My issue is the fact that they went out and they got Kirk Cousins already before. And it's like, you're doing this middling thing.
So to that point,
yeah,
make sense of it.
Oh, I mean, okay, let me say this. I get the Michael Penix Jr. player, and I understand what the future is, which is why I think this offseason, it depends on how this season goes. I think this offseason is going to be kind of the time to, hey, maybe he gets a shot next year. That's what I would do. But you're playing this middling game of, hey, I would have traded back in the first round. And you saw the first defensive player didn't get selected until pick number 16 or pick number 17. I would have traded back. You could have got an extra second or third round pick and taken one of those defensive guys instead of going with the Michael Penix, because you signed Kirk Cousins to this deal. And their thought process is, we want the best of both worlds. Well, let me break it to you. In the NFL, you can't get the best of both worlds. It never works like that. You can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You have to be all the way in. And that's the issue with this Falcons team. They don't know which they wanted to be. And I think Terry Fontenot is squarely to blame for this.
You know, I think when people get these general manager front office roles, I do think there's a little bit of overthinking process. You know, on social media, people say, oh, you're an armchair general manager. You're just saying this and saying that. Yeah, but I also think that it's not that complicated. Now, obviously, there's a lot of intricacies in the background where, you know, players have off the field issues and stuff like that probably plague your thought process to a degree. I don't feel that notion when it came to this draft class, respectfully. I think when you look at it, when there's all offensive players being drafted, right? Offense. And you have the chance to select the first defensive player to come off the board. And you say, you know, I know we just made a big deal about signing Kirk Cousins. We went through a whole PR thing about Kirk O'Chain's coming to Atlanta. You know what we're going to do? We're going to draft the oldest quarterback in this draft class, respectfully, and we're going to sit him behind Kirk Cousins, who clearly came to Atlanta and said, and I quote, Atlanta is my last stop. I don't want to go anywhere else, right? We're going to sit the oldest prospect at the quarterback position, albeit he was widely regarded. You overdrafted him to a degree. Let's be honest with ourselves. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. And so while people say armchair general manager, I think there is some truth that sometimes these general managers overthink.
Yes.
I don't know. I just think that, I'm not going to say me necessarily, but I would love to see somebody like Michael Hara inside of a front office or in draft war room. I don't think he overthinks that move. I don't. I understand it's exciting to get caught up in the prospect, but not only did you mess up the vibes with your new quarterback, because he was completely off guard by, at least I was told he was close to asking for a trade, because his whole thought process was he was going to be the guy in Atlanta. They were not going to draft the young quarterback, right? Yeah. He wants to end his career in Atlanta, and what they do with their first pick to show that they support that move, and, you know, after they went after him ferociously, they go out there and they draft a quarterback that's aging. To me, you have to play Michael Penix at some point.
Yes.
It puts Kirk Cousins firmly on the hot seat. Yes. And if the Falcons don't make the playoffs this year, or they don't have playoff success, well, what does that look like for his seat moving forward? You have to think about seriously moving into Michael Penix Jr. because you don't have the time to waste.
Yes.
And that's the thought process behind this regime. There was no real thought put into the Michael Penix drafting, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's where my thought process too is. And this could be one of the greatest quarterback draft classes we've ever seen, right? Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix. I think all five could potentially be their team's franchise quarterback. If you are heading into free agency, seeing this draft class, they clearly like Michael Penix Jr. beforehand. And you had the number 8 overall pick, you already knew you were going to have a chance at one of these quarterbacks. Michael Penix just didn't fall into your lap like we expect him to get drafted early. No, you knew that he was going to be there. So my frustration is, if you knew you were going to try to go do this, it really is their thought process. They were half in, half out. They liked Kirk Cousins. They needed a quarterback. So they went out and they got him. and you went and you got Michael Penix Jr. So for me, it's like, hey, if we're going Kirk Cousins, you have to go all in on this window. And I like what they did. They went out, they added Matt Judon. They went out, they added, obviously you got Jesse Bates. I think they added Justin Simmons too. So it's like you're trying on the defensive end, but it really is half in, half out. So like I said, I think it's smart to think about the future for Penix Jr. But in my opinion, I look at what the Broncos did. They went and Sean Payton said, hey, I want my guy. And yes, you're throwing Bo Nix into the fire, but the dude is 24 years old as well. And he's played 4 or 5 years of college. Michael Penix Jr. has played many years of college. So it's like, we're going to sit him for 1 to 2 years. For me, that's where my frustration is. Hey, you really are half in, half out. And it looked good on paper, but it's just not working.
I think it's a lose-lose for the Falcons. It's going to be really funny. Either they'll have a 26-year-old quarterback on the bench, or he'll be 25 next season. Penix, he'll a top 10 pick who's 25 years old, just wasting away on the bench, or they'll have a guy that's taking up $40 million worth of the cap on the bench. So either way, it's going to be a very funny situation for the Falcons at quarterback next season. Like you said earlier, Daniel, I understand like the thought process behind taking Michael Penix there, but still, it's just setting up for them to just look stupid either way. So we'll see what they do next year. For the time being, I think this is Kirk's team unless things really, really unravel.
Unless like they lose the next 2 weeks, because they just got dog walked by the Broncos bad. So it's like I'm with you. I think 2 weeks, like these were 2 very bad weeks. You're still first in the division, so it's like if you're on path to not make the playoffs, then we could be talking about Michael Penix, and I wouldn't be shocked because, like I said, those next 2 games, Chargers, Vikings, those aren't easy games. So it's like, see how the next couple weeks go. But like I said, their division right now looks like to be in shambles as well.
We want to thank you guys again for tuning in. Make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content. I want to move on over to Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, apparently there's some concern about his injury, that obviously he had the injury in the offseason. He left practice early yesterday, and it puts not only this week in doubt, but some people are seriously questioning, what does Brock Purdy look like for the rest of the season? How does that impact the Niners? How does that impact people like Kyle Shanahan, who reportedly came into the season with a little bit of fire under their seat because of all the moves that were made? What are you guys' thoughts on Brock Purdy and the Niners, Daniel?
Yeah, I think that Brock Purdy and the Niners, they're in a weird spot. And I've seen a lot of people, say Shanahan's on the hot seat. And I think his seat should definitely be warm. But it's weird, man. Like this past week, like 2 weeks ago, I thought that they were all right. You got Christian McCaffrey back. You're going to start going on a roll. Once again, I looked at the NFC and I was like, this team could contend. They really could be players. But you lost a close divisional game to the Seahawks. Now Brock Purdy's out, or, questionable. You got some fans saying, oh, we want Brandon Allen. It's Brandon Allen time. I still like Brock Purdy. And my concern is what happens if the season goes south for them, right? What do they do? Because you're about to fork out a shit ton of money for him. You're going to have to. So it's like you're in the conversation of, is it a Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan? Is he our long-term answer at head coach? They've got a lot of question marks right now because this roster, as it looks, should be championship contending. And that's where my question lies. And I got to see who they're facing this week. I forgot, but it's like they're in a tough spot because there's a chance where they're a bottom seed, if not potentially missing the playoffs. So, Mike, what do you think?
I'm just excited to see Bengals legend Brandon Allen in action this week. You read the headlines. It says 49ers hopeful that Brock Purdy can play this week. You look at the full quote, it's not happening. Like Kyle Shanahan's out there saying where he did a little bit more in practice today, but he's just like still severely limited. It's just all not trending in the right direction. I think we'll see Brandon Allen or the Pastronaut Josh Dobbs out there this week. So we'll see what they end up doing. It's seeming like it's trending towards Brandon Allen, but it's a tough NFC matchup this week, Daniel. They got the Packers, so it's not a gimme game, especially if you've got a backup quarterback in there. And I'm on the same page as you. I had really, really high expectations for this offense once they were all returning. Deebo Samuel's healthy. Juwan Jennings, fantasy stud right now, and just on the film looks phenomenal as well, replacing Brandon Ayuk. And it seemed like they have the pieces to go out and do everything that they need to win games. And that didn't happen last week. You only scored 17 points against the Seahawks, and you've got another tough one this week in the Packers. So I'm not ready to give up on the 49ers. Vegas, they give them a lot of respect still as well. If Brock Purdy, this is a long-term thing, you really have to start answering those big questions as a franchise. What do we want to do with Brock Purdy? What do we want to do with Kyle Shanahan? And personally, I still think Kyle Shanahan should be holding on to his job. I know that the 49ers fan base is a lot more critical of him than some of the outsiders looking in are, but I think that the path forward is pretty clear. You sign Brock Purdy. The general NFL fans are not going to be happy with the money Brock Purdy ends up getting, but I think you retain Kyle Shanahan. They're going to cut Deebo Samuel after these extensions for Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. You move forward with Purdy, Shanahan, the rest of the crew, and I really do think on paper, this is a contending team. I don't think you can, and they've been pushing for the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl each of the last couple of years. I don't think you can let one lost season damage the resume of Kyle Shanahan too heavily. So I think you keep the core together. Financially, it doesn't look like Deebo Samuel is going to be a part of that, but I do think that they have the weapons to continue to be a contending team for years to come. So I'm not pushing the panic button on the 49ers just yet.
Deebo Samuel has Kansas City Chief written all over him. The more I think about this, I think he has Kansas City Chief written all over him. But you think they'll cut Deebo?
Yeah. Just looking at what the contracts that they've committed. I mean, that was last offseason. The storyline was like just looking at the financially and the money that Brandon Ayuk was going to get. It's either they sign Brandon Ayuk to this extension or Deebo Samuel gets cut. They signed Christian McCaffrey to a bunch of money. They extended Juwan Jennings last offseason. So they've got their pieces there. And just financially, it's looking like they're going to be pretty hard pressed to keep Deebo Samuel around. So I really wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being a cut candidate this offseason.
For sure. And it's honestly, it's a little disappointing when you consider everything that this team wanted to achieve. And this crowd's kind of stayed together for a little bit here. It's very similar to another team I know. You'd think that they'd, the report that they had would be enough to get them over the hump. But with the quarterback being injured, now the running back in and out of the lineup, and obviously the injury to Brandon Ayuk, we don't know how he comes back from that. It does muddy the waters a little bit for the Niners and their future. It's gonna be interesting. But it's time to talk some Cincinnati Bengals. But before we do, make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Hey, listen, the Bengals are 4-7, but that does not stop some players from saying we ain't winning, we ain't losing next week. We winning next week. Believe that. Some players are still going out there with the utmost confidence, believing that this team is going to win next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Germaine Pratt, linebacker for the Bengals, came out on Twitter saying that. I don't know what was the thought process was there. Maybe he was watching some film. He felt very, moved by the film he was watching to a degree, but he felt compelled to say that we winning next week. Believe that. I'm really curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are on that. What do you guys' thoughts are on the 4-7 Bengals still being confident against a team that is rolling? I would say outside of last night, they were rolling.
Yeah, no, this Bengals team, and we talked about it. Like they are. It seems like there's a sentiment right now that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase are locked in, and it seems like this team, of course, they want to win. I'm just curious to see how they return from the bye week, and I'm curious to see how focused and how dialed in. So Germaine Pratt going on Twitter saying that like you better be confident, and that's the part for me where, hey, if you're gonna say that on social media, we better not see the cracks in the locker room. We better not see the cracks, the yelling on the sideline. Like, of course, that's fiery. Of course, that's passionate. Germaine Pratt is a totally passionate guy. But the conversation we had on State of the Jungle is this locker room could be lost. Zach Taylor might have lost this locker room. This locker room could be in shambles. Well, if you're confident in your team, you better not go out this weekend and show that there's cracks in that locker room. You guys better be a full united front. And that's where my concern comes in, because damn right, as a football player, you need to be confident. You should be confident in your team. And I hope that they're confident. We talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They went out on Thursday Night Football. I think that it was really a huge letdown spot for them, coming off a huge win last week. They have a huge look ahead spot against Cincinnati Bengals, prime time against the Browns. I think that was a perfect letdown spot for the Steelers. I would not be taking this team lightly. And I hope that Zach Taylor and his brass is not sharing that this will be a light game. This is a very tough game. I think the Steelers should be favored to win this game. And man, like I said, Germaine Pratt going out there saying that on social media, like, he's a confident dude. Like, it doesn't necessarily, shock me. But my issue is we better not see cracks in that locker room. That's why I don't know. I think that we do. I think that they do. If they do lose that game, it could look very, very, very rough. But like I said, if you're confident in the flip side of things, if you're confident, you go out there and win this game against Steelers and you go on a little run, this could look like Germaine Pratt knew something that we didn't know. But I think it's okay to have the confidence. But like I said, you're 4-7 right now. This team, I just hope that these dudes are all locked in right now, and that the culture doesn't break in the locker room. So,
yeah, I mean, this isn't something we haven't seen before out of this team. I mean, we've seen poster board material out of Mike Hilton. We've seen it out of Jamar Chase. This isn't something that we're not accustomed to as fans. I mean, it is what it is. Like you said, you like to see your players being confident and stuff. Is it something that needs to be made public? Probably not.
Right.
But I mean, what are you going to do about it? I mean, you gotta live to play the game this week. You got the Pittsburgh Kneelers on the schedule, and then after that, if you get this win here, AFC North win, you got a couple of very winnable games in the Cowboys and the Titans coming afterwards. So it's basically you got to win out. It seems like at this point. I mean, maybe there's a world where they can afford another loss, but the Broncos with a statement win against the Falcons, I really thought the Falcons were going to be able to hold their own. We kind of already touched on that, but at this point, it's looking like they're going to have to win every single game the rest of the way. And do I have the confidence in this team to do that? Yeah, I really do. I think, I mean, you look at their losses. This is arguably the most devastating Bengals season in my lifetime, because they have 7 losses on the season. And you can make an argument if 10 plays in those 7 games go a different direction, go in the Bengals' favor, you could think 5 to 6 of them could be wins. I mean, there's games where you can point to literally individual plays that have cost the Bengals the game that are very easy fixes. So is this team capable of competing with the class of the AFC? My answer is a resounding yes. We've seen them contend with the Chiefs, and that came down to 1 play. We've seen them hold fourth quarter leads against the Ravens in 2 games. We saw them put on a nearly historic comeback against the Chargers. So I think that this team can still compete with the class of the AFC. Their record doesn't completely reflect what quality of team we're dealing with here. Obviously, there's some issues here, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And Joe Burrow's had his moments of struggling. Obviously, he's playing as an MVP caliber quarterback, but I mean, we can't exclusively pin these struggles on the defense. There's been some moments where the offense has been able to put the game away, and they simply have not done that. But is it in the range of outcomes that this team goes on a run like we've seen in years past and just rattles off a bunch of wins in a row? Yes. But just really getting back to Germaine Pratt's comments, I really like that he's confident, but like I said before, it doesn't need to be public. I really wish he was not putting that on Twitter and he was keeping it to himself.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, there's, confidence comes from knowing. So you got to ask yourself, what do they know? What do they know that makes them so confident to where the starting middle linebacker feels the need to put that on social media? I love the tweet Matt Minnick put out, Coach Matt Minnick on Twitter. He says, the key to the Bengals defense has always been Germaine Pratt. He plays well. The Bengals defense usually plays well. I thought that was very, very interesting. It's a conversation I never really gave any thought to, but I think that Germaine Pratt has made some critical plays for the Bengals the last couple of years, whether it be the interception in the playoffs, the strip of Travis Kelce. He's just always tends to turn it on, especially after the bye week. I've always said to myself, 4-7 is a hole you have to somehow try to figure out to climb out. And it's crazy with the extra added game. The Bengals still could finish with double-digit win. That's the nutty part of the season.
Yeah.
They still face a team like the Broncos who are ahead of them right now for playoff contention, all that kind of stuff. And they have a lot of stuff that is ahead of them. I just look at it and I say, hey, you know what? This Bengals team always tends to turn it on under Zach Taylor after the bye week. What will this team look like after the bye week? What is this team going to look like after the bye week? I certainly don't feel like the move to acquire Marco Wilson off of waivers will be enough to change the face of the defense. But can the defense find some semblance of consistency? That's going to be the biggest question. I think that will be the biggest telltale sign, if you will. How does this team look? I look at it and I say, you got one of your leaders in Germaine Pratt who seems ultra confident that they're going to win next week. Kind of put the pressure on the team unknowingly. I'm pretty sure Joe Burrow probably saw that and said, "Shut up." Probably let's focus on what we focus on, because now you have a pissed off, motivated Pittsburgh Steelers team who just lost a divisional game, and I think they're 0-7 under Mike Tomlin on Thursday Night Football or something like that. It's interesting, man. I'm curious to see how this next game shapes up, but more so how after the bye week shape up, man. It's crazy to think this team could still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that they will do that, but I would say the biggest question mark, and we probably should talk to Mike about this a little bit because he doesn't really get a chance to join us on these conversations. What position group do you think the Bengals need the most consistency out of in order to make a run for the playoffs, Mike?
I sat down with some friends before the season and talked about this. I said the Bengals' path to missing the playoff would be through the pass rush and the secondary, and that's proven to be true. If I had to pick one of the two, I really do think it is the pass rush. I mean, having a lethal pass rush just makes the secondary's job easier. But kind of changing course here, I really do. You talked about coming out of the bye week. I think that if we don't see just supremely physical play out of Cam Taylor-Britt against George Pickens next Sunday, I'm going to be not happy whatsoever. I mean, if you can take away George Pickens, I really don't see a path to the Steelers winning this game. I've continued and will continue to call the Pittsburgh Steelers an inept offense that will hold back their aspirations to making a playoff push. You can win the turnover battle and you can play good defense as much as you want, but there's only so many times Russell Wilson can put a moon ball directly into George Pickens' lap. If you have a physical corner who can play well, we've seen what the ceiling for Cam Taylor-Britt can look like. I don't think at this point, I think we kind of have our questions answered in terms of what he looks like from a long-term perspective. But in terms of an individual game, coming out and playing physical and playing well against George Pickens, that's something that I will really be looking for as a fan in this upcoming game against the Steelers coming out of the bye. Because, I mean, at this point, it's really Cam Taylor-Britt in the secondary, at least in the corner room. I know you got Mike Hilton playing in the slot, playing the nickel, but without DJ Turner, without Dax Hill, I mean, he's going to have to step up and carry this unit for the rest of the season. And if he doesn't, let's be real. The playoff hopes are thin. Yeah. They're very thin. But if he is going to have to play, I mean, I remember a year ago, people were saying future All-Pro Cam Taylor-Britt. He's going to have to play like that future All-Pro Cam Taylor-Britt for the next handful of games if the Bengals have a hope of making a run down the stretch this year.
Yeah. I agree with you. That talk was very interesting, but I do think that applying more pressure on a quarterback creates havoc in the backfield. And I think you make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. I wonder will we see any change-ups in the defensive back room, whether it be from the Geno zone at free safety, which I don't know if we'll see that, or, obviously I'm guessing Josh Newton is slated to be now a starter alongside Cam Taylor-Britt. Listen, no one's going to run through that door right now and save this Bengals team. So you have to ask yourself, where do we have the most bodies right now that can probably help our defense change? And when I look at it, it really is the defensive line. You brought back Raymond Johnson, although he's on the practice squad. You still got Myles Murphy out there. Find ways to utilize that guy, get that guy in the field. If Sam Hubbard's not healthy, okay, let's get that guy off the field. Let's get more guys out there. Let's see, we talked about it on State of the Jungle a couple weeks back. I think Joseph Ossai is so huge for the second half. because you need someone to be able to extend pressure beyond a Trey Hendrickson. You need somebody to make Trey Hendrickson's life a lot easier. Who's that going to be? I don't think Sheldon Rankins is turning over a new leaf in the second half of the football season. So swap that guy out. We started seeing guys like Chris Jenkins get more snaps. BJ Hill obviously being in and out of the lineup with injury. But do you move Myles Murphy more on the inside? Do you move, because honestly, I would say that's where he's had the most success in his NFL career so far. When the Bengals moved him into the interior of the defensive line, we saw him be able to create a lot of pressure, create a lot of havoc. And I saw him even be able to bring up a couple double teams because that size is such a hard thing to kind of deal with. But does that make life easier for guys like Trey Hendrickson? Does that open up opportunities for guys like Joseph Ossai? To me, I think that there are some things that this team can do that doesn't involve, hey, let's go with a heavy blitz approach and hopefully we don't get burned. The cool thing about this is you have Cooper Rush on the schedule. You have Russell Wilson on the schedule, which is interesting. I wonder, does Russell Wilson have a problem throwing the deep ball? Somebody brought up an interesting point. The Steelers consistently take him out for Justin Fields on deep ball situations, and if they want to launch the ball down the field. I wonder that. So does that I know Russell Wilson can obviously extend plays. I do know he will take deep shots at points, but you're facing the next couple of offenses you're facing are very how do I say this without
containable?
Yes, containable. I think containable is the perfect word to use. I think the next couple of offenses you're facing are extremely containable. And I'll keep saying what I've been saying, just don't be someone's get right game. Justin Herbert in that offense played like they never had all season against this Bengals secondary. And I think that just speaks to their I guess the lack of confidence in the Bengals secondary. The one thing I will say is the Chargers have some good tackles. They have some underrated tackles. And I think that they were able to stave off a pass rush from Trey Hendrickson. But I also think that some of the guys you've got coming up don't have as big of a I would say the tackles aren't that big of a worry for some of these other teams coming up. But again, we have a tendency to sometimes make these teams look a lot better than what they are offensively. But I think being sound and knowing assignments and being locked in is super, super important. I'd like to see Zach Taylor. I'll keep beating the drum. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't say this. I don't care that T. Higgins is back. Still find a way to get Mike Gesicki involved. Right? That's just that simple. Tanner Hudson should not be out snapping Mike Gesicki, especially in the pass. In the passing game, that should not just happen. I don't understand the infinity of love that is being shown to a Tanner Hudson on a weekly basis. So for me, bring the guy in that you sign for a particular reason. Could you imagine him and T. Higgins in the red zone?
Yeah.
With Jamar Chase in the slot? Who are you guarding? What are you doing? Right? To me, it's just it really doesn't have to be that big of a rocket science. To me, personnel football is going to be so huge down the stretch for the Bengals. Situational coaching is going to be so huge down the stretch for the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't really care too much for for the conversation, the talk of people saying we're going to beat this. Go out there and prove it. Go out team and punch a team in the mouth and show that you can do it. All right. Be consistent. That's my biggest thing. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. I want to move on over to the NBA. We are going to get to fantasy football because it wouldn't be fantasy football Friday, if Mike's joining us live in the studio, but it wouldn't be fantasy football Friday if we didn't get a chance to talk with him through. But one thing I want to start off with in the NBA right now is there seems to be a little bit of a, I would say, discourse happening in Philly right now. Tyrese Maxey reportedly called out Joel Embiid for being late to meetings, not holding himself to the standard of the rest of the team. And I just want to take this moment to do a victory lap. I won't get up and run, but what I will say is, Daniel, you told me before the season the process wasn't dead. Yeah. You told me before the season that you still believed in the Philadelphia 76ers team. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told you back a couple months ago. Joel Embiid will be traded by the trade deadline. That's my opinion.
Think so?
Yes, 100%. The writing's on the wall in Philly. It's over. It ain't happening. You got Tyrese Maxey and stars calling him out. You got those young players outworking him. You got the emergence of young stars like Jared McCain, who, by the way, I told everybody was going to be what he was going to be. Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, obviously hyperextending his knee almost every couple of weeks. So I don't feel like the marriage of a Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid is going to prove fruitful. And that kind of stuff kind of just spills over as the season progresses. I think Joel Embiid is going to wind up being traded. I think the process is dead in Philly, and I also think Joel Embiid's future in Philly is dead. Daniel, what say you?
Yeah, no, I will fully admit that the process is dead. And my thought process was the process will never be dead until Joel Embiid is off the team. So I guess this kind of works in my favor. Hey, if he's off the team, then the process is officially dead. But I always thought that, and I still think that he is a player to where, and this is kind of how my roster construction when I look at NBA teams is, I still think that if you have him as the 1A/1B and you get a dominant guy, a ball handler, or a star wing next to him, you could have success. But it's clear him as a culture guy, it's just not working in Philly, right? Whether it's him being late or whether it's him being always injured, it just ain't working. So I'm with you. I don't think that this Philadelphia team can have success with them. And I look at the Paul George thing. What is this team really doing? Are they competing with the Boston Celtics? Are they competing with the New York Knicks? They're not this season. Paul George can't stay healthy. Embiid can't stay healthy. They're role players. You don't know what the hell you got going on. So I'm with you. I think that Joel Embiid should definitely, if I'm the Philadelphia 76ers, I'd be looking to trade him after the season. My issue and the reason why I say I wouldn't trade him now is because you went out and you freaking signed Paul George. And it's like, that's my frustrating thing is you didn't learn anything this season, the past 2 months, that you didn't already know about Joel Embiid. Mm-hmm. You knew he was injury prone. You knew he didn't show up at times and wasn't consistent in the playoffs. And you knew that there was serious culture concerns, whether it's incidents in the past with, former staff or him interacting with Philadelphia 76ers fans. I'm just not a fan of how this whole situation has played out. And if I was Philadelphia 76ers, I would have addressed this earlier. I wouldn't have tried to salvage something by adding Paul George. So for me, I think you have to ride this out this entire season. You went out, you got Paul George.
I don't know if they have to ride it out, though.
I think you do.
I don't think they do. And let me tell you why. Because I think that this team is still a team that could be competitive. I like the addition of when Tyrese Maxey obviously gets back. If he's back already, is he back yet? He's back, right?
He's fine.
He's back. Tyrese Maxey, and then you got Jared McCain. You have a back,
backcourt.
I was gonna get there. You have a backcourt. Damn. You have a backcourt that you could sort of build the future hopes on in Philly.
Yeah.
And I personally feel like this is a team with the backcourt of Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain that can make a lot of noise still. Now, Jared McCain's a young player, so you don't want to put a lot of the onus on him, but you still have a very good center in Andre Drummond. So if you were to move off of Joel Embiid, sure, you would lose the scoring of a Joel Embiid, but you'd probably gain a lot from a locker room morale standpoint. Paul George, if he's able to figure out the whole hyperextending knee thing that keeps happening on a regular basis, I think Paul George could work with a Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey. Paul George is still a very good defender. Yeah. I'm not the biggest Kelly Oubre guy personally, but I mean, he has to be a starter until Paul George gets back. Sure, that's fine there. But I just don't think that you should the season's still young to the point where you don't have to let this Joel Embiid thing completely ruin locker room chemistry. That's my thought process. Hoping Joel Embiid is going to turn a corner after he already feels some type of way towards the media, pushing a media member, feeling betrayed by his teammates. He came out and said whoever leaked that report is an asshole. Yeah. For him to come out and say all those things, what does that tell you? There's one guy that everybody's pointing the blame finger at, and it's crazy. I just want to say this. Joel Embiid, now you know how Ben Simmons felt. I'm just being honest. Now you know how Ben Simmons felt. Now you know how people like James Harden felt. Now you know how a lot of people who felt when they put stars next to you, the blame I felt like never was shifted on Joel Embiid. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah. We're getting somewhere because this guy is now a former league MVP. And I feel like that was the one thing he wanted. I feel like he wanted to be an MVP. He wanted to prove that he was better than Nikola Jokic. He's not. But he wanted to prove that, hey, I'm better than Nikola Jokic. I could win MVP. But ever since then, it feels like you break down. If you are Daryl Morey and you're in the 76ers front office, you have to look at yourself and you have to say, if we trade a guy like Joel Embiid, this is probably the last year, realistically, we can get something of a tangible value for a guy like Joel Embiid that would really help our franchise into the future. Holding on to guys that no longer obviously serve their purpose or no longer even seem remotely interested in the overall team achieving does nothing for you. All it does is it puts a guy like Daryl Morey in the spotlight on the hot seat. And then you ask yourself, well, why didn't you make this move sooner? Joel Embiid has an attitude problem. Joel Embiid has a work ethic problem. And let's face it, Joel Embiid also is at a point now where he has the injuries that creep in with his knee and stuff like that. So what do they actually lose by trading that guy?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Who's trading for a guy who just signed a $200 million contract who physically can't play a back-to-back? I mean, that
believe
seems
it or
like
not, there are teams that do it. Believe it or not, there are teams that do it because of the name value. But I've always felt like a marriage between the Dallas Mavericks and Joel Embiid made a lot of sense. I always felt that way, and I've been on record saying that. I think that's the one piece that they are missing, because I gotta ask yourself, why can't Joel Embiid play a back-to-back? Well, I think it's because he feels like he has to do too much when he is actually in there, right? He has been the star in Philly for so long. You go to you trade Joel Embiid to a Mavericks, although I don't know if they have enough assets to entice the 76ers. You put him in a situation where, well, Joel Embiid at this point wouldn't have to worry about being the first star, the second star. He could be that third option, just grab his rebounds. You know, obviously you don't have to run the offense strictly through Joel Embiid like they do when he is in Philly. To me, it might be a pipe dream. It might not make a lot of sense from a financial aspect, but I've seen, again, I feel like cap in the NBA is sort of a myth a little bit. I've seen some of the craziest shit happen. I just think that personally, Joel Embiid's time in Philly is over. Some team would go out there and trade for him. Some team is saying, hey, we can get value out of that guy. I just happen to think that the Dallas Mavericks make a lot of sense. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
I think that there's a couple interesting teams that could. And that's the thing. I'm with you. I think that Joel Embiid, he's not going to see the full life of his contract with Philly. And I think if he does, that's a major, major, major mistake on their part at this point. And that was my frustrating thing this offseason. Like I said, I understood the thought process of Paul George, but if you're doing that, you're all in on Joel Embiid for the next couple of years. And it's clear that they're not. It's clear it's not working. So I think the teams obviously that were rumored were the Indiana Pacers. They were a team that said, hey, everybody's talking about them. They're currently the favorites to get Embiid. And I could see a world where the Pacers do it right. You give up, Miles Turner, you give up Pascal Siakam, you give up multiple first-round picks. Maybe keep Pascal. You give up one of your, guards like an Aaron Nesmith, and you pair Tyrese with Joel Embiid. I could see that. But then these other teams, I think it's just tough. You're breaking up an entire core to bring in a guy who is injury prone. And that's the concern, right? You could say a team like the Miami Heat, right? They are a team that's always on the precipice of, having that superstar success, but they can just never get it done. They're a team that has a ton of talent on the roster. I'd love, Khalil Ware. They just drafted him. You got Jaime Hawkins. You have Tyler Hero. You have Duncan Robinson. You got a ton of guys that you can afford to trade, but you're asking yourself to bring in a guy like Joel Embiid, and what does he do to that culture, to their locker room? But Embiid's been on record saying he loves Jimmy Butler, and he wants to play with Jimmy Butler.
That's actually
again.
an interesting spot that I didn't think of. That makes a lot of sense.
The only issue there, and where my mind is churning, is how does he fit into the culture? They're hard-nosed, work their ass off type of team, and I think they really like Bam Adebayo. So it's like, if you're going to make that trade, do you give up Bam Adebayo?
Do you have to trade Bam if you make the trade? I don't think you have to. I think you can trade a Tyler Hero who has been floated around in rumors. I think Jaime Hawkins is a guy that 100% is in, he's thrown into that conversation. The Nikola Topic dude.
Oh yeah, Jovic.
Jovic.
Mm-hmm.
Is he? Why do I just keep messing? Those
no,
guys
that's
up?
Topic.
Topic.
He's a player.
Yeah. No, I know he's a player. I'm just saying. I don't know why I messed up. Yeah, it's too many Nicolas in the league right now.
Jovic, Topic,
and I don't know. I think about it and I say that the Tyler Hero move can make a lot of sense. It could be a breath of fresh air for a guy.
Yeah.
But then what does that do for the backcourt of the 76ers if you were to trade for Tyler Hero with the emergence of Jared McKinney, with the emergence of Tyrese Maxey,
Yeah, no, that's where my mind goes to. And that's why I struggle to see how he's on their team within the next, after 2 years. I just, like I said, this kind of seemed like the last ditch effort. Go get Paul George, see what this does. If this doesn't amount to anything, like if we're talking a first round exit, if I'm the 76ers brass, you have to do something.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't necessarily know what they do, but it seemed like they knew that they're on their last legs by going out trying to trade for Paul George. I mean, Paul George is what, 34, 35 years old? He's getting older.
For you.
So it's like, they're just hanging on to something that it's clearly not going to work with Embiid in Philadelphia. It's not.
It's
So.
going to be interesting. Mike, you got anything on that?
I mean, I've been waiting for my Chicago Bulls to make an all-in move for the last decade, and this seems like one to go
An
after.
all-in move,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got the young core to put around him and Josh Giddey. You know, they got Zach LaVine. This seems like a great spot for the Bulls to make a move. Finally, make a push to get out of the play-in for the first time in the last 3 years. So I've been waiting since D Rose left the team, and I think this is what they do.
He's hopeful,
man. I mean, there's even some of these other teams. Maybe they're not contenders, but like, I mean, these teams, a team that just needs a punch. Like, it sounds crazy, but like the Bulls, like even you look into these teams, like the Rockets, for example, they say they're gonna roll with their young core, but if you get 1 year into this year, if they don't make the playoffs this year, maybe you do go trade for an Embiid and you go say, hey, we need a superstar on our team. So,
well, I think the Rockets have a couple problems of their own. First of all, the disrespect that's been shown to Cam Whitmore is insane to me. He's now playing in the G League. Like, what? Are we doing?
What?
Yeah,
Whitmore.
Whitmore. Yeah,
they back and forth,
and now you got Alperen Sengun coming up on a contract here. You got
I think they paid him.
Right?
Him
Thompson,
and
Jalen Green. Like, it's getting to a point now where it's like, okay, you have to see some return on your investment. And for me, it's like the Rockets are just like one of those teams that's super competitive, can be any team any night, but just can't put it all together. It's gonna be interesting. But let's talk about a team that is starting to put it together. And it all started with the steal of the draft, in my opinion, and Dalton Connect. Listen, the Lakers missed out on Cam Whitmore last year, but the previous year, but they made it right by drafting Dalton Connect, who I believe could be a franchise cornerstone of the future. Do not be fooled by the Lakers stuff you see in the background. I am a huge Boston Celtics fan, as you can see by that hat right there. I just want to talk about it, though. Dalton Connect 4, as they call him. You got to ask yourself, is Dalton Connect going to be a Lakers cornerstone for the future? Is he the missing piece for the Lakers? The Lakers are always involved in trade talks, and they've been flirted with trading guys like D'Lo in the past, the whole 9 yards. But it really feels like this youth movement is something that's given LeBron James, Anthony Davis new life. This is something that JJ Redick and them can kind of hold their hat on, if you will. Obviously, they had the loss last night to the Magic. But you got to feel that this Lakers team is starting to put together. You got to feel like them running through some of their young stars is going to allow them to, have some fresh legs down the stretch here. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I hope that this is a turning of a new leaf for the Lakers. They tend to get their young guys and don't develop them and trade them away. And that just goes to the list of Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Josh Hart, D'Angelo Russell. All these dudes leave LA and do way better. But I think that this could be a turning of a new leaf. And this is important. LeBron James, we don't know how much longer he's going to play. It's probably 1 to 2 more years. And you've got to develop your young guys. And I think Dalton Connect, like LeBron said, everybody was laughing with him saying, oh, he's always lying and saying he thought of this. I truly believe that they knew they got to steal in Dalton Connect as soon as they drafted him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
you couldn't believe he was there.
Yeah. And it's like, it's as simple as go look at that dude play in college. And I can understand maybe he's older, maybe he played multiple years. He's not a freshman, but that dude could play and he could shoot the damn ball. And I think that he's a huge piece of what they could do in the future. So
it's amazing what happens when you have a coach that's actually dedicated to the long-term future of the Lakers versus just the here and now that wants to, just win a championship with LeBron and then move on into the sunset. I felt like people like Darvin Ham, I felt like they were sort of almost riding the coattails a little bit of having LeBron James on their team. Now you have a coach in JJ Redick who left the media industry, which he was becoming a superstar. And now he's dedicated to the long-term Lakers future. And JJ Redick, he remembers being a player that, was, I guess, thrown to the side, if you will. He's huge on player development. He's huge on this youth movement, which is why I think they could have a lot of success. And I'm going to go a step further, man. I think that if they play their cards right, they might have their star next to AD after LeBron James retires. And I think you feel very, very good about the prospects of that moving forward. I think Dalton Connect was an absolute steal. I think Dalton Connect can be a franchise piece. And I do think Dalton Connect could be the score that they were looking for that, at points in times, I would say D'Angelo Russell sputters. Like he can go for 25 a night, and then the next night he'll probably go for 5 points.
Yeah.
Austin Reeves can give you anywhere between 10 and 32 a night, and that's a huge margin. When you got people like AD and LeBron James playing the way that they are, that they are currently. LeBron's 40 years old. I mean, look at the way he's playing right now. And now you have a superstar in Dalton Connect. I'm sorry, whoa.
I was gonna say,
wow.
Yeah.
Bring that back. You have a potential superstar in Dalton Connect that could really alleviate some of the pressure. And you're making faces over there when I said potential superstar.
Superstar is tough for me. But
Daniel, you're the same guy that says D'Angelo Russell.
I never said he's a superstar.
You were super high on D'Angelo
Yeah,
Russell.
but superstar is different for me. I never said it.
Dalton Connect is
think
better than, and it will be better than D'Angelo Russell.
Of course, but
Dalton Connect will be better than Austin Reeves,
of
right?
course.
So you got to look at when the Lakers won a championship with the Avery Bradleys of the world, with the Contavious Caldwell Popes. What did they have? The Danny Greens of the world. They had guys that could score. And if you look at it right now, when they get Jarrett Vanderbilt back, when they get Rui Hachimura back, they now have guys, right? Their bench is deep now.
Yeah.
They're looking good now.
No, I'm with you.
And that was the one thing that was missing for the Lakers. When LeBron, we always talk about the non-Jokic minutes. What about the non-LeBron minutes? Right? We all know that Bronny James is on the roster because of nepotism, because of who his dad is. He doesn't offer anything to the Lakers. But when you look at the Lakers bench as a whole, Gabe Vincent, their team, their pieces on this team that we're not talking about that genuinely help this team. Jackson Hayes, if he works out, whatever this legal issue that's going on with him, he's a guy that was emerging as a young player as well, being able to be that center. And then you got Christian Koloko, another guy, strong rebounder that can offer up some stuff when Anthony Davis is off the court. To me, it's been so impressive to watch what the Lakers bench is doing when those guys are off.
Yeah. And that's what I think for me, and this is something I've kind of come to the conclusion recently in the NFL and in the NBA, that coaching is such a huge factor. And this is just in life in general. It matters. I believe that superstars will always find a way to work. I don't care who you put them with. There's certain people, and whether that's in life or that's on the basketball court, on the football field, there's certain players that no matter where you put them, they will work. But then there's other players that just need some guidance. And I think the Dalton Connect landed in the perfect spot, because you look at JJ Redick, and I'm going to give him all the props in the world. He's a player where he knew his role. He wasn't a superstar. He was, and I think Dalton Connect can be better than JJ Redick. But to have a coach like that knows the feeling of how to curl off of screens, what it feels like to get hot at the right time, to be in that flow state as a shooter, to be in a situation for Dalton Connect when he's got a coach that can understand exactly what his mindset is, that can say, hey, Dalton Connect, here's your first game that you've ever started in the NBA. I'm going to get you in rhythm right away. The first play I'm going to draw up is for you so you can be confident. I think that there's so much to be said about having a coach and having a mentor and having somebody that you can put your trust in and say, hey, I'm starting for the first time. And the fact that he went out and dropped 37 points and the entire fan base, the entire team is hyping him up, I promise you, people remember that shit. And that gives him so much confidence for the rest of the season. He could go on cold stretches. He could have games where he's not scoring, but he will forever remember, hey, at least I know what I can do when I'm at my best. And at my best, I can drop 37 a night and I can hit 9 straight threes. So I give JJ Redick all the credit in the world. And I think that having the situation, having the environment, I'm just going to say it like Darvin Ham, there's levels to coaching. And I'm fully ready to say, maybe I'm buying too much into this, but I look at what Darvin Ham was saying and how he was running his offense. LeBron James and Anthony Davis were running that team with Darvin Ham.
Can I just say something real quick, though?
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me, Mike. So if you don't know this, Daniel's a huge JJ Redick guy. Like he has been even when he was in the media.
Yeah.
And you've preached so much about how you love JJ Redick and how much of a culture change, how much of a game changer he could be, and coaching matters and all this stuff like that. We saw a rookie Dalton Connect drop 30 plus points the other night.
Yeah.
And you talked about how much JJ Redick, was a player and how he understands the ins and outs of the game and how he can get the best and how coaching matters. But you disagree with what I said when I said
I don't think
Dalton
he's a
Connect
superstar.
I said he could potentially be a superstar.
I don't think so. I view superstar.
What do you mean? If you think
Yeah.
if you think Dalton Connect, right, has any potential positives to add to his game as a if you think about him as a rookie, you saw what he's done already so far, and then you pairing him up with a guy that you think the world of, and a coach and JJ Redick, you gotta have hopes that coach can get the most out of a Dalton Connect. You saw what he did. Most people are saying that Dalton Connect could be a star in this league. They really believe he could be a star in this league.
Well, that's where and maybe I'm drawing the line. I view superstar as top 8. No question.
Who cares about that? I'm talking about he could be a star for this Lakers.
Yeah, I view star.
Superstar.
No, I view that totally different.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I think he could be a star for this Lakers team.
Totally.
I think that, and guess what? You don't need a goddamn superstar to win a championship. How many superstars didn't win championships?
I will say this: if you have a pairing of, I think that there is a world where Anthony Davis and Dalton Connect are the 2 best players on a championship team. I can give you that. I think that's fair to say. I think that you can build a team around those 2 guys. And I think at his ceiling, what Dalton Connect could be, I think he could be a pairing to an Anthony Davis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You can't preach about how highly you view JJ Redick and then say you don't think that Dalton Connect could be a star.
Well, no, that's what I view it differently. Like I said, I think superstar, I'm not bashing Dalton Connect.
Oh no, we wouldn't allow that.
Well, I'm not. I think that superstar for me, I'm talking Giannis. I'm talking like LeBron James, obviously. I'm talking Anthony Davis at his peak. Like Anthony Davis, even before, this season, you could say wasn't a superstar. He wasn't consistent.
What?
He wasn't. Outside of his championship,
consistent, but everybody knew
at his peak.
But his whole thing was Anthony Davis's whole thing was he wasn't available.
Even when he was healthy, though, at times, a lot of times.
Everybody said if Anthony Davis, the reason why the Lakers traded all the assets, their young players, and Brandon Ingram and all those first-round picks for Anthony Davis, because everybody around the league looked at Anthony Davis as a superstar.
Yeah.
Guess what? The league is deep. There's a lot of players, right? You could be top 15, top 10, maybe top 12, and still be a superstar. Top 8, who gives a shit about that? That's all subjective, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard is looked at as a superstar in the league when he's on the court.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is Anthony Davis had always had this potential.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of getting a coach that was able to unlock it. To me, there was too much backyard basketball. It was like me and you going out there playing basketball. Hey, set a screen. Now you have a coach that's willing to draw up plays and stuff like that, not going off of so much emotion, even though JJ Redick is a pretty emotional guy. I think that the return of what a Dalton Connect could bring for this Lakers team could be massive down the stretch. And the fact that they're getting him this experience now, Mike, by the way, when it comes to football, isn't it crazy what happens if you give a young player experience now, right? Versus throwing them into a big game, right? And seeing what they could potentially be. I wish teams around the sports world looked at that, from basketball to NFL. Give young players an opportunity early on, so that way if you need to rely on them in a massive moment, the lights aren't too bright for them. The lights aren't too big for them. Just my thoughts, just my 2 cents. But when it comes to Dalton Connect, I think Dalton Connect will be massive for the Lakers going down the stretch. Mike, is there anything that you want to add when it comes to the Dalton Connect thing?
Is Dalton Connect the missing piece for the Lakers? He might be. I don't know.
But they've been missing scoring.
Yeah.
That's a real big thing. The Lakers have been missing scoring. They've been relying on guys like Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell too much. D'Angelo Russell, the most inconsistent player on this Lakers roster.
I'm as a very casual NBA fan, I'm just thrilled to see how a team progresses through the season and the playoffs with a podcaster as a head coach and a 40-year-old guy as an offensive focal point. So those are the storylines I'm looking out for. But you guys are on a different wavelength here. So Dalton Connect, we'll see. Superstar, I'm on Daniel's side here. Yeah, superstar, that's reserved for the highest regard.
I was more so saying star. Daniel's definitely not as high on Dalton Connect as I am.
I disagree. Yeah. We're on the same page. We're agreeing more than we disagree. I think, like I said, my simple state is I think he could be. His ceiling is being a 1B to Anthony Davis and on a championship
That's
team.
enough to win a championship.
Of course,
team,
I'm
right?
with you.
Right. So
I'm with
you slot LeBron James into that, and now Dalton Connect is in a situation where he doesn't have to be that next star next to Anthony Davis. The whole point is Dalton Connect the missing piece for the Lakers? Meaning this season, could he potentially be the missing piece for the Lakers for this season? I think the answer is yes, because you still have LeBron James on the team. You still have Anthony Davis, obviously, on the team. You still have those guys playing at an all-time elite level. If Dalton Connect could be a third star next to them, you're sitting freaking pretty with the offensive prowess that a guy like Austin Reeves adds and what D'Angelo Russell can add in spurts. That's all. That's the whole thing I'm saying. So yes, 100% Dalton Connect could be the missing piece for the Los Angeles Lakers. Hey, listen, it's Fantasy Football Fridays here at TWSN. It would not be a Friday if we didn't talk fantasy football. Damn, we've been live for a while already.
Wow.
But let's jump right into it. Mike, first and foremost, I know we're usually virtual. How is your fantasy football team doing? Daniel's gonna take it away after that.
So about the same as last week. Wide range of outcomes for my teams. I hit on it last week. Drafting wide receiver heavy this season. It's been a struggle. Been able to, just with all the injuries and whatnot, been able to recover in some spots. Not been able to recover in others, but I think it'll end up being a solid year with a championship team or two.
Championship team or two. I like that. And before we get into this fantasy start sets, once again, make sure you guys like this video and drop down all your fantasy questions. Before we get to the start sets, I want to talk about teams that are heading into the playoffs, right? Let's say my team isn't doing so well. What would you suggest? Are you suggesting, trades? Are you suggesting rolling with the team waiver wire? Let's say if my team, hey, I'm 2 games behind and I've got a couple weeks left. What would you suggest I do for my team? And obviously it's subjective, but would you suggest trying to trade for plays? What would you do?
Oh yeah. If you're like on the bubble and it's like within the realm of possibility that you make the playoffs, you have to just go all in now. And I think the really the biggest factor there is, they say it about just generally the NFL, but it's true of fantasy football as well. The best ability is availability. And with between weeks 12 this week and week 14, 12 teams will have their bye week.
Wow.
We have 6 teams on bye in week 12 and week 14. And those are 2 of the last 3 games of the fantasy football regular season for most teams. So if your team is going to be loaded up on buys in those weeks, whether you like it or not, you might just have to sell those guys a little bit of a discount just so you can have like starting caliber players in your lineup if you're in must-win situations. So for most teams, for most leagues, the trade deadline is this week or next week at the very latest. So make those moves now, evaluate what your lineup is going to look like in these next 2 weeks and make plans accordingly, because nothing's worse if you're in week 14, last week of the regular season, you're in a spot where you're in a must-win game. If you win, and maybe there's some tiebreakers involved, but if you win, you're putting your team in a position to make the playoffs. There's nothing worse than just not having the players available. Like you have to, like, understanding your team's availability, your roster construction. That's what you can do to set your team up for success. And with 6 teams on bye in week 14, I mean, you have to consider what your roster is going to look like.
All right, so let's move it over to start sits. We got week 12 here. We just had Thursday night football. Let's start off with some of your starts. Give me your first guy that you think has an amazing matchup, or a guy that you're saying, hey, if you got him on your roster this week, you're sitting very, very, very pretty.
Yeah, typically I like to go with the fringe guys here. Just kind of the guys that people that aren't really shoo-ins for their lineups, and people might be debating it. And one of those guys for me is Bucky Irving.
I got him on my roster.
Yeah, maybe consider slot him in the flex slot this week. But over the last month, it's been a bunch of up and downs for the Buccaneers. They've lost 4 straight games. And Rachaad White has really functioned as the pass catching back and the guy who plays the majority of snaps when the Buccaneers are playing from behind. So we've seen a lot of Rachaad White in this last month, but we've seen their roles between White and Irving, their roles kind of solidify, and we've got more clarity. Irving has become the primary ball carrier of the duo. In the last 4 games, he's out-carried Rachaad White in 3 of those 4 games. And I think this is a matchup where we're going to see the Buccaneers against the Giants, 5.5-point favorites. I think the Buccaneers could realistically go wire to wire and lead for the entirety of this game. So this is a game script that I believe favors Bucky Irving. He's a candidate for 15 touches in this game. And you can run all over the New York Giants front 7. I alluded to it earlier in the show, but they rank dead last in yards per carry allowed, and they rank dead last in explosive rush rate allowed. So percentage of carries that go for 15 plus yards. And we've seen Bucky Irving be an explosive rusher throughout the year, and we've seen him be able to be efficient on the ground. In the last month, we've seen Chuba Hubbard, Najee Harris, and Saquon Barkley all crack 100 yards on the ground against the Giants. I think that the Buccaneers are going to be playing with a lead and looking to establish the run against this defense. So I'm excited about Bucky Irving this week if I have him on my lineup.
A little bit of breaking news: Daniel Jones has been released from the Giants right now. Just happened. Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport just reported that.
That is shocking to me.
Wow, mid-season. Okay.
I guess we kind of like understand the background of the the retirement speech,
Yeah.
so to say. That makes a lot more sense now. You've probably seen this coming for a couple of days. That's a really shocking move.
Yeah, I'm sure he was probably told about that or something. But
Oh,
let's keep this fantasy football Friday going. Give me another guy that you're a fan of, starting wise, whether it could be a different position, could be quarterback, could be wide receiver, but who's another start that you love this week?
Yeah, one of them for me is Christian Watson.
Yeah.
So you have to fantasy football is a week to week game. You have to kind of consider what you need out of your flex position to lead yourself to victory. A lot of teams, they need to be chasing that ceiling outcome, that spike week, in an effort to find wins. And I think one of those guys who can reach that ceiling outcome on low volume is Christian Watson. The last couple of weeks, the last 2 years rather, we've seen Matt LaFleur kind of be known for that wide receiver rotation, that it works for the Packers as a team, but it really frustrates fantasy managers. But we've seen a little bit more stability in these last couple of weeks. Christian Watson, his route participation has cracked 67% in 2 of the last 3 games, and that's obviously coming at the expense of Dontavian Wicks. But with more routes, obviously, that's just more opportunities for Christian Watson to earn targets. And as he's approaching becoming a full-time player, he sees those downfield looks. He draws looks in the end zone. And last week we saw him rack up 150 receiving yards. So I think that goes a long way in making himself a more regular player in the lineup, kind of icing out Dontavian Wicks. And obviously just being on the field is huge for his future outlook, but he's just generally, his archetype is one of those guys who can reach that ceiling just because he sees those deep targets. He's just a massive physical body in the red zone. So he gets those end zone looks. So he can get to those high-end outcomes without a lot of volume, but with his increased usage and his increased snap share and route participation, he could see increased volume as well.
I love it. So before we get back to one more of your starts and then some of your sits for the week, we got a couple questions from James O'Hara, the guy. He said, Rashad White or Bucky Irving versus the Giants?
That one's really a toss-up.
Okay.
Given what I expect to be the game script of the Buccaneers leading most of the way, I like Irving because it's really strange with those guys kind of ping pong. They both have a pass catching skill set. They prefer Rashad White on the passing downs, but we've seen Bucky Irving draw 6 targets in a game. They both get usage at the goal line, so you can't really bank on either of those guys. They kind of ping pong around. But I'm going Irving. I expect him to rip off a couple of long runs and potentially push for a career high in touches.
Gary Jellison, our guy, said, is Tua a starter again? And does that bring the value of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle up?
So Tua is one of those kind of spot start kind of guys. You're not relying on your lineup every week. This week against the Patriots, it's not a super strong matchup. I'd be looking for a better streamer, like his opponent, Drake May. He can create explosive plays on a whim. He's averaging over 40 rushing yards per game. He's used at the goal line as a rusher. So I'd be chasing if it's not a consistent starter that you have, I'd be looking for a rushing quarterback. Or I doubt Justin Herbert's on waivers at this point in many leagues anymore, but he's got a phenomenal matchup with the Ravens. So I really wouldn't like rolling with Tua this week against the Patriots. In terms of Hill and Waddle, yes, his presence in the lineup is absolutely massive for them. I know we've seen some struggles from Waddle recently, and that's a whole nother conversation. But obviously, Tua's presence in the lineup is a boost for Hill and Waddle. I'm pretty high on what Tyreek Hill can do this week, but I'll touch on that in the betting portion of the show. So we'll save that for a little bit later.
I love that. And we got one more or 2 more questions. I'm pretty sure this is Brian Robinson or Austin Eckler this week from James O'Hara. Okay.
Yeah, so that's another one that is really heavily driven by game script. I mean, you everyone who's an NFL fan kind of knows Austin Eckler, the more pass catching type. Brian Robinson, the ground and pound, not really playing on third downs. Against the Cowboys, this is a Brian Robinson game. The worst rushing defense in the NFL, with Cooper Rush under center, just a really struggling offense. Just one to attack with defensive streamers as well. So yeah, this is a Brian Robinson type of game. In this matchup, you can expect him to push for 20 carries potentially.
Love it. And then one last question from Swiss 94 or 54 said Anthony Richardson or Geno Smith, 2 quarterbacks.
So I'm a sucker for chasing ceiling. If you haven't kind of been able to tell based on what I've been saying here, we saw what the kind of outcome last week from what fantasy managers were hoping when they drafted Anthony Richardson back in August, completing 67% of his passes, 300 total yards on the ground, 3 total touchdowns, 2 of which came on the ground. So I'm the guy who's going to chase ceiling, even though it's really, really volatile with Anthony Richardson. But I mean, this is also a solid matchup for Richardson. It's the only game with a total over 50 points on the slate. You know what the Lions offense can do. So I expect Richardson to be pushing the ball downfield and scrambling at a really high rate in an effort to create explosive plays that keep the Colts in this game. And another really encouraging sign from Richardson last week, he had 10 designed runs. That's the most of any quarterback in a single game this season. So Shane Steichen understands for this offense to find success, he's got to get the ball into Anthony Richards' hands as a rusher. And we know that they're going to be looking to push the ball on offense to keep up with the Lions. So I think this is a solid matchup, and just fundamentally, Anthony Richardson's the kind of quarterback that I prefer to play.
We'll touch on a little more of him on our betting segment as well. Give me some. Let's go to your sits of the week. Let's go to 2 guys. If you got 2 that you're not a fan of, right? Whether it's matchups, whether it's guys that you're just trying to avoid. Who are the 2 players that you'd avoid this week?
Yeah, one of those guys in that streaming quarterback range, kind of like the spot start area, is Matthew Stafford. Since the return of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, he's had 10 touchdowns in the last 4 games, 8 of which have come in 2 of those games. But so the Rams offense is really turning around. They're starting to find production through the air, and they're passing at a really high rate. But I think that this could be a matchup where they start to slow down. It's a marquee matchup. I believe it's the Sunday night matchup, Rams, Eagles. The Eagles' new look secondary is really, really coming together. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, 2 rookies who have been playing just out of their minds in recent weeks, quite frankly. They've held their opponents to less than 200 passing yards in 3 straight games. And the Eagles haven't allowed a 250-yard passer since week 4. So this is just early in the year before they started to come together. And last year, this was a secondary to attack in fantasy football with your quarterbacks and your wide receivers. But at this point, they are a high-end defense, a high-end secondary overall. I believe that they are leading the league in yards allowed per game, just total rushing and passing. So yeah, this is not a defense that you want to take lightly. And with Matthew Stafford not really being that weekly starter type, this is not a matchup where I'd feel comfortable with him.
All right, so one last one besides, because I'm with you with that, and I think that's one we'll definitely touch on a little bit. The Eagles defense has been absurd. You look at Quinyon Mitchell has been literally, what are they calling him? Some island, and it's like their defensive line dominant. So I'm with you. Is there any other players that you're avoiding this week?
Yeah, so this one's a little bit more out there. You can't sit them, but don't be shocked if you're disappointed. And for me, that's Derrick Henry. The Chargers run defense has been incredibly stout this season. They have been very, very good against the run. We saw Chase Brown have some success last week against them in fantasy. I believe he nearly reached 19 PPR points, but the guys who have found success against the Chargers this season have done so through the air. The Chargers defense has allowed 15 PPR points to only 3 running backs this season. And 2 of the 3, Chase Brown, the second one slipping my mind right now, but 2 of the 3, at least 10 of those 15 points have come through receiving work. So the only running back to eclipse 10 points from rushing production alone, so touchdowns and yards, has been James Conner this season. He rushed for, I think, 107 yards against the Chargers, but they've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs this season. So this has been a really, really tough defense to get the running game going. There's a world where Derrick Henry just falls in the end zone and he gets you to 80 yards on the ground and 14 points because of that touchdown. So, but I really don't think that this is one of those games where Derrick Henry runs buck wild for 150 yards and 2 scores. And he's really not going to get there through the air. He needs to crack 100 yards and find the end zone for him to have a big day in fantasy. And I really think this is more setting up to be a day with 70 yards on the ground, 80 yards on the ground. And if he falls in the end zone, he gets there, but it's still even like 14, 15 points. That's not really what you're looking for out of Derrick Henry. So I would temper expectations with Derrick Henry this week, but still, like, unless you're in a 4-man league, you're starting this guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, we can move over to betting.
If you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content. I feel like Daniel's like leading the charge today. I'm
Really?
not used to this. It's kind of strange.
Oh,
He like we can move over to betting.
Oh, well,
like
I
that,
just
no, ready to
we could talk about fantasy football a little longer. You want?
No, it's all good. Fantasy football Fridays here at TWSN definitely do not disappoint. I want to get some of my favorite bets today. I guess I'm gonna rattle off just a few for you guys. As always, you guys can subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. We'll have all our plays up there. We have picks that come out each and every single day. I'll give one UFC prop for this card. Be mindful the card starts extremely early, so if you're not that big of a UFC fan, you probably won't be watching this card. If you are a huge UFC fan, remember it starts at like 6 a.m. So best
I think earlier.
Well, the main card starts at 6
Oh
6
yeah.
a.m. Carlos Ulberg KO TKO against Volkan Oezdemir is a prop that I like and is sitting at plus 150. I favor Carlos Ulberg in this fight. I think he's more technical. I think that this is a fight that if he wins, he'll probably be fighting someone within the top 3 after. Hell, he might even be able to jump and get a championship fight. His name has already been mentioned in championship cycles. But you can scan that QR code and get the rest of our UFC plays. As far as today, the Celtics take on the Washington Wizards. Got a few plays for that game that I like. Jason Tatum over 28.5 points. But here's a prop that people are a little sleeping on. Jordan Poole, his last 2 games, has scored 26 and 31 against the Boston Celtics. I don't know what we did. I don't know if him and Jason and Tatum have beef. I don't know if someone on the Celtics, took a girl that he was interested in, but he always seems to show up against the Boston Celtics, at least the last 2 games. And his points total is sitting at 18.5. It's a prop that I like. If you even want to sprinkle the 25 points, which he's hit the last 2 games, is sitting at plus 240. Vegas definitely has this line a little bit too low for a guy in Jordan Poole that has always showed up against the Boston Celtics. I like PJ Washington today against the Denver Nuggets. No Aaron Gordon still in the picture. 15 points at plus 140, 8 rebounds at plus 150. 2 props that I absolutely love. If you want more of the plays, subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, definitely a huge fan of those. And the ones that I look at too, I'm with you. I think the Boston Celtics game, that's a beautiful prop. Jordan Poole, I absolutely love that one. I like a weird one in that game. I like Peyton Pritchard's over in points. I like his over in points at 12.5. Pritchard is a guy, and the Celtics have been on record. Jaylen Brown's been on record saying, hey, in games that we play against some of these lower level teams, we tell Sam and Peyton, hey, this is going to be your game. And I think that that's what we got going on here. The Washington Wizards are respectfully garbage right now. And I think this is a game where the Celtics, it'll be a closer game still in the third quarter. I don't think the Celtics will blow them out completely, but Peyton Pritchard's seen 25 plus minutes a night. 12.5 points is, in my opinion, way too low. He's hit that in his past 4 matchups against the Wizards, and 3 of those, he actually only had less than 20 minutes. So him consistently seeing 20 plus minutes a night, I'm a huge fan of that. And if I like something else, I definitely look at, I definitely like Clint Capella. He's got a good matchup against your boys today, the Chicago Bulls. And Clint Capella is a guy where his matchup, when he's got another big center, he always does well. And my concern with him is when he gets benched against teams that are either playing small ball or teams that love to use that stretch big. And while Vucevic can hit the threes, Clint Capella's had a great history against the Chicago Bulls. And I like him at over 20 points and rebounds. We can go. Did you have any NBA or do you have all NFL?
I got all NFL.
All NFL. Beautiful. Malik, you want to go with the NFL first?
Nope, you can go. I'll save mine for the Patreon.
Awesome. Mike, how about you start us off? NFL.
Yeah.
What do you like?
I got 3 plays for NFL so far this Sunday. Typically, personally, I like to get gritty and bet a lot of unders, but I've got 3 overs this week. First is Josh Downs over 4.5 receptions facing off the Detroit Lions. I kind of already talked about it with Anthony Richardson, expecting them to. Anthony Richardson hasn't attempted 35 passes in a game yet this season. I think that's very much within the realm of possibility for them this week. But the Detroit Lions allowing the most targets, receptions, and yards to slot receivers this season. Josh Downs runs 85% of his routes out of the slot. So he's their go-to guy, their number 1 target earner. I really like Josh Downs to rack up receptions against the slot funnel. Detroit Lions defense this week. My next one, Bucky Irving, longest rush over 14.5 yards. I hit on it when I was talking about him as a start. Should expect him to see a push for 12 carries or so this week. And against the New York Giants defense that leads the league in explosive rush rate are allowed. They're just allowing teams to rip off 15-yard runs at will over 5 yards per carry. This is the defense to attack with a prop like this. And my final one is Tyreek Hill, longest reception, over 23.5 yards. We talk about these last few years, the NFL defenses using too high shells to kind of contain offenses like the Miami Dolphins, contain those speedsters like Tyreek Hill. And last week we saw, or 2 weeks ago, we saw the Buffalo Bills use too high coverage on 82% of their snaps, which is just a ridiculously high rate in an effort to contain Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle and company. But the New England Patriots, they don't do that. They'll stick with their single high looks throughout the game. They're consistently floating around 50% to 60%. The last time when they played the Dolphins, I believe it was week 8, they were sitting at 53%. When Tyreek Hill is given an opportunity to face single high coverage, he consistently dominates. He is, I mean, like you just think about it, like the too high looks, that's like what's used to contain those guys like Tyreek Hill, those downfield burners. So I don't think that the Patriots are going to change their defensive philosophy. We've already seen them not make a shift when playing the Dolphins. I expect them to play single high 50 to 60% of the time this week against the Dolphins, and Tyreek Hill to take advantage of that and rip a long one.
The last thing I will say, I wasn't going to jump on NFL, but I'll say this. If Brandon Allen is the starter for the Niners, like it's predicted to be, he has a tendency to overwork the running back. And I think in large part is because he doesn't trust his eyes and he kind of just goes to the check down quite often. This is a big game for Christian McCaffrey, I believe. Christian McCaffrey, anytime touchdown is a play that I like, sitting at minus 140, but Christian McCaffrey over on his receptions at 4.5 is a play that I like. I think Christian McCaffrey will be the leading receiver for the Niners this game with Brandon Allen at quarterback. Listen, we want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik, Wright. We'll be back here live Monday morning as we talk all through week 12 of the NFL and get you all geared up for the Bengals game. There will be no recap show, obviously, because the Bengals are on a bye week this Sunday, but we will be back next week for that as well. I want to thank you guys for waking up, talking sports, having the conversation. Thank Mike for joining us live in studio for the first time, man.
Of course.
And behalf of TWSN, obviously the entire crew, I want to wish you a happy birthday to you, brother. Hopefully this wasn't too boring way to spend it so far.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Man, I appreciate that, man. We appreciate having you on. But make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. Follow Mike O'Hara on X if you're not following him as well. But again, there's only one way to wake up, talk sports, enjoy the conversation, and that is the right way. We'll see you back on Monday.
So kick that, relax, the team W.